The officer's flashlight cut through the rain like a blade. "Step out of the car," he shouted. Dr. Marcus Bennett gripped the steering wheel tighter while blood pounded in his ears. On the speakerphone beside him, nurses were screaming from the operating room. "Doctor, her heart rate is crashing." Marcus looked at the officer standing outside his window and realized something terrifying. The man didn't care. Not about the emergency. Not about the patient. Not about the hospital badge hanging around Marcus's neck. And somewhere across the city, a woman was dying on an operating table, completely unaware that the police chief's own officers had just handcuffed the surgeon trying to save her life. The rain hammered the windshield as Marcus Bennett sped through downtown Raven Hill. His jaw was tight, his eyes locked on the road ahead. The Bluetooth speaker crackled again. "Dr. Bennett, we're losing pressure fast," Nurse Ava Monroe said breathlessly. "Dr. Keller still hasn't landed. Trauma teams prepped, but they need you now." Marcus checked the dashboard clock. 11:48 p.m. Too late, too slow. "Start massive transfusion protocol," he ordered calmly, even while accelerating through a yellow light. "Get 4 units uncross-matched blood ready. I want vascular clamps opened before I walk through those doors." "You think she can hold on?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Rain blurred the city lights into streaks of gold and white. "I'm coming," he finally said. "That's all that matters right now." At home 20 minutes earlier, he had been asleep in his recliner. His wife Denise had draped a blanket over him after another brutal 16-hour shift. Marcus Bennett was one of the best trauma surgeons in the state. Patients were flown in from 3 counties away when cases became impossible. He had rebuilt shattered arteries, repaired hearts torn apart in car crashes, and once operated for 11 straight hours to save a teenage girl nobody thought would survive. But tonight's case was different. Ruptured thoracic aneurysm, massive internal bleeding. Without immediate surgery, the patient would die. Marcus tightened his grip on the wheel. The hospital sat only 9 minutes away. Then red and blue lights exploded behind him. "No," he whispered. The police siren wailed. Marcus immediately signaled and pulled to the curb. Rain splashed violently against the hood as he lowered his window and grabbed his hospital ID. A tall officer approached aggressively, hand already resting near his holster. "License and registration." "Officer, I'm Dr. Marcus Bennett from North River Medical Center." Marcus held up his badge. "I'm responding to an emergency surgery right now. A patient." "I said license and registration." Marcus blinked. The officer's name tag read Officer Troy, MADSEN. Rain dripped from the brim of his hat as he stared into Marcus's car with naked suspicion. On the speakerphone, voices echoed from the operating room. "Pressure's dropping. Get anesthesia in here now." Madsen frowned toward the sound. "What's all that?" "The hospital," Marcus said quickly. "I'm connected to the OR team. Please, officer, if you call dispatch they'll confirm." "You doctors always think rules don't apply to you." Marcus froze. "I'm not asking for special treatment," he said carefully. "I'm trying to save someone's life." Madsen leaned down closer to the window. His eyes moved across Marcus's expensive suit, luxury watch, and black Mercedes. "This your car?" Marcus stared at him in disbelief. "Yes." "MHMM." The officer straightened slowly. "Step out of the vehicle." Inside the car, Ava's voice rose in panic. "Dr. Bennett, we need you now." Marcus's pulse spiked. "Officer, please listen to me. There's a woman dying on an operating table." "Out of the car." Marcus swallowed hard. "I'm cooperating. I just need you to verify my credentials." "You arguing with me?" "No." "Sounds like arguing." Rainwater poured through the open window now. Marcus could feel his clothes getting soaked. "I'm asking you to make one phone call." Instead of answering, Madsen suddenly yanked the car door open. "Out!" The force startled Marcus backward. "Officer!" Hands where I can see them. Cars slowed nearby. People started watching. Marcus stepped carefully onto the wet pavement, hands visible. His hospital ID swung from his jacket. The officer ignored it completely. "Turn around." Marcus hesitated only for a second. "Please," he said quietly, "you're delaying emergency surgery." That was the wrong thing to say. Something changed in Madsen's face. A flash of irritation, ego, rage. "You think you're above me because you're some fancy doctor." Marcus's stomach tightened. "No, sir." "Then stop acting like it." Another patrol car arrived. A second officer stepped out, Sergeant Clay Durham, older, thick-build, hard eyes. "What's the issue?" Durham asked. "Speeding, non-compliant." Marcus stared in disbelief. "I'm complying." "He keeps reaching around inside the car." "I reach for my ID," Marcus protested. Durham barely glanced at him. "Search the vehicle." Marcus's chest tightened. "Officer, please." Ava's voice burst through the speaker again. "She's coding." The words sliced through Marcus like a knife. He instinctively turned toward the car. "Big mistake." Madsen grabbed him violently. "Stop, RESISTING." Marcus slammed against the side of the Mercedes. Pain exploded through his shoulder. "I'm not resisting." But Madsen was already escalating. He swept Marcus's legs out from under him. Marcus hit the pavement face first. The impact rattled his teeth. Before he could breathe, a knee crushed into his back. Pain shot through his right arm as Madsen twisted it upward. Marcus screamed. Not from fear. From terror over his hand. His surgical hand. "Please," he gasped. "My shoulder, I'm a surgeon." Should have thought about that before fighting cops. Rainwater mixed with blood near Marcus's mouth. The operating room staff could hear everything through the phone. "Dr. Bennett," Ava shouted desperately. "Doctor." Madsen grabbed the phone and hurled it into the street. The screen shattered beneath passing tires. And in that moment, Marcus realized the patient might die because of this. A crowd gathered under umbrellas nearby. Phones came out, cameras recorded. Nobody intervened. Durham crouched beside Marcus casually. "You should have cooperated." Marcus could barely breathe beneath the officer's weight. "I did." The handcuff snapped shut around his wrists. Agony ripped through his shoulder. Marcus bit down hard to stop himself from crying out again. Across town, inside North River Medical Center, chaos erupted. Ava Monroe stared at the dead call line in horror. The trauma team surrounded the unconscious patient while monitors screamed. "Where is he?" a resident shouted. Ava grabbed another phone immediately. "Call dispatch right now." Back on the roadside, Officer Nolan Price arrived as backup, younger than the others, nervous. He looked down at Marcus lying handcuffed in the rain. Then he noticed the hospital badge half buried in water. Price picked it up. His eyes widened. Sergeant." Durham barely looked over. "This says he's chief of trauma surgery." Madsen scoffed. "Fake." But Price was already radioing dispatch. "Can you verify Dr. Marcus Bennett from North River Medical?" A pause. Then dispatch answered immediately. "Confirmed. North River has called multiple times requesting emergency release. Subject is needed for critical surgery." Silence. The rain suddenly sounded deafening. Price looked horrified. Durham's face drained of color. Madsen slowly removed his knee from Marcus's back. The crowd murmured loudly now. Several people had heard the radio confirmation. Durham cleared his throat awkwardly. "Take the cuffs off." Madsen hesitated. "Now." The cuffs unlocked. Marcus stayed on the ground for a moment, breathing hard. His shoulder burned, his fingers tingled strangely. He pushed himself up slowly. Nobody apologized. Nobody asked if he was injured. Durham simply muttered, "You're free to go," as if they had just inconvenienced him slightly. Marcus looked at all three officers, then at the broken phone lying in the street, then at his trembling right hand. Fear flooded him colder than the rain. Without another word, he climbed back into his car and sped toward the hospital. Every bump in the road sent agony through his arm. By the time he reached North River Medical Center, Ava was already waiting outside with a wheelchair. She took one look at him and froze. "Oh my God." Marcus stepped out carefully. His suit was soaked and filthy. Blood stained his cheek. But his first words were simple. "How long?" 43 minutes delayed. Ava's voice cracked. "Marcus, the patient." He didn't let her finish. "Prep the OR." As they rushed inside, Ava finally whispered the detail that changed everything. "The patient is Olivia Chambers." Marcus frowned. "The mayor's wife." Everything stopped for half a second. Then Marcus kept walking. Inside operating room 3, tension hung like smoke. Doctors turned as Marcus entered. Several gasped quietly at his appearance. One resident muttered, "Jesus Christ." Marcus scrubbed in despite the pain shooting through his shoulder. His fingers trembled. Not badly, but enough for him to notice. Enough to terrify him. "You can't operate like this," another surgeon whispered. Marcus looked up slowly. "Then she dies." Silence. No one argued again. He stepped to the operating table. Olivia Chambers lay pale beneath harsh surgical lights. Her blood pressure was crashing. "Scalpel." The room obeyed instantly. For the next 4 hours, Marcus fought death itself. His shoulder screamed every time he moved. Sweat poured down his face. Several times his hand trembled dangerously while repairing the ruptured vessel. But he never stopped. Never hesitated. Never surrendered. At 4:12 a.m., the monitors finally stabilized. Olivia Chambers would live. The room erupted in exhausted relief. Marcus stepped backward carefully, then nearly collapsed. Ava caught him before he hit the floor. "You need help." "No," he whispered. "Need to speak to the family first." Outside the operating room, Mayor Daniel Chambers stood waiting alongside city officials and security personnel. When Marcus emerged still covered in blood, the mayor rushed forward. "My wife." "She's stable," Marcus said quietly. The mayor's eyes filled instantly. "Thank God." Then he noticed Marcus properly. The bruised face. The ripped sleeve. The way he held his arm. "What happened to you?" Before Marcus could answer, Ava did it for him. "The police assaulted him on the way here." The hallway fell silent. Mayor Chambers stared at her. "What?" "They pulled him over, ignored his credentials, handcuffed him in the rain while your wife was dying." The mayor's expression hardened instantly. "Who?" "Ravenhill PD." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. He suddenly looked exhausted beyond words. "I just want to go home," he murmured. But home would have to wait. Because by sunrise, the story had already exploded online. The first headlines painted Marcus as reckless. Dr. DETANED after aggressive traffic stop. Surgeon accused of RESISTING OFFICERS. Anonymous police sources claimed Marcus became combative, claimed he endangered officers, claimed force was necessary. Marcus sat in the emergency orthopedic clinic later that morning, while Denise scrolled through the articles in disbelief. "They're lying," she whispered. Marcus flexed his fingers slowly. His hand shook again. The orthopedic specialist studied the MRI silently before speaking. "There's significant nerve inflammation." Marcus's stomach dropped. "How bad?" The doctor hesitated. "You need complete rest immediately. I have surgery scheduled. You can't operate right now." The words hit harder than the tackle. Marcus stared at his hand. The hand that had saved hundreds of lives. The hand that defined him. Denise grabbed his arm tightly. "We'll get through this." But Marcus barely heard her. Because all he could think was, what if I never operate again? By afternoon, North River Medical Center placed Marcus on temporary leave pending evaluation. The official statement praised his dedication, while quietly distancing the hospital from controversy. Marcus read it once, then tossed the phone aside bitterly. They're protecting themselves. Meanwhile, the police department released carefully edited bodycam footage. The video began after Marcus was already outside the vehicle. After the escalation, after the aggression, the footage showed only Marcus appearing frustrated while officers shouted commands. Online opinion shifted instantly. Another arrogant rich doctor. He should have complied. Why was he speeding? Marcus sat silently in his living room watching strangers debate whether he deserved what happened. His younger daughter Maya paced furiously nearby. "They cut the footage," she snapped. "You can literally see edits in the timestamps." Maya Bennett was a civil rights attorney, and unlike Marcus, she was no longer interested in staying calm. "This wasn't an accident," she said. "It was targeted humiliation." Marcus rubbed his injured shoulder carefully. "I followed every instruction." "I know." No sudden movements, hands visible, respectful tone, everything we're taught to do. His voice cracked slightly. And it still didn't matter. Denise sat beside him quietly. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Marcus finally whispered the truth he'd been holding inside, since the pavement crushed against his face. "When he called me boy, I knew." Silence filled the room. He'd already decided who I was before I even opened my mouth. That night, Maya uncovered something important. The released bodycam footage contained a 7-minute gap. 7 missing minutes. Exactly when the assault occurred. "That's not corruption," Maya said coldly. "That's panic." The next breakthrough came from somewhere unexpected. Officer Nolan Price knocked on their door at 11:30 p.m. He looked exhausted and terrified. "I need to talk." Inside the kitchen, Price placed documents onto the table with shaking hands. Original dispatch logs. Unedited timestamps. Internal police messages. Marcus stared at them silently. Price swallowed hard. "They knew who you were before Officer Madsen touched you." Maya's jaw clenched. "What?" "I verified your credentials immediately," Price admitted. "Dispatch confirmed emergency status. Sergeant Durham ordered us to continue detainment anyway." Marcus looked physically ill hearing it out loud. "They knew." Price nodded miserably. "They changed reports afterward, changed timestamps, tried to make it look like verification came later." Denise covered her mouth in shock. Maya immediately started photographing every page. "This is enough to destroy them." Price looked down. "I became a cop to help people," he whispered. "What happened that night wasn't policing, it was ego." The next morning, the story exploded again. this time with evidence. Civilian cell phone footage surfaced online showing the full encounter from start to finish. The nation watched Officer Madsen rip Marcus from the car violently, while Marcus begged officers to let him save a dying patient. Millions saw the hospital badge hanging visibly around his neck. Millions heard him say, "Please, she's going to die." Public outrage detonated overnight. Then came the final blow. Mayor Daniel Chambers held a live press conference beside his recovering wife. Olivia Chambers looked weak but determined as she stepped to the microphone. "The man these officers brutalized," she said clearly, "is the same man who saved my life hours later while injured." The room fell silent. He could have refused treatment after what happened. He could have walked away. Instead, he operated for 4 hours to save someone he didn't even know. Her eyes hardened, and the department tried to destroy him for it. Questions erupted instantly. Within hours, Internal Affairs opened criminal investigations. Officer Madsen was suspended. Sergeant Durham placed on administrative leave. But Marcus still sat alone in physical therapy, staring at his trembling fingers. Justice didn't fix nerve damage. Weeks passed. The city boiled with protests and hearings. More victims came forward against Madsen. Black professionals, students, business owners, drivers stopped for looking suspicious. The pattern became impossible to deny. Meanwhile, Marcus fought a quieter battle. Every morning he retrained his hand. Tiny exercises, grip drills, suture practice. Some days he improved. Some days he didn't. One afternoon, after failing a precision exercise for the 3rd time, Marcus slammed the tools onto the table in frustration. "I can't do this." His therapist stayed calm. "Yes, you can. What if I never operate again?" The therapist looked him directly in the eyes. "Then they steal more than your dignity. They steal your purpose. Don't give them that." That sentence stayed with Marcus. Months later, City Hall held the official public hearing. The chamber overflowed with reporters and citizens. Maya presented evidence methodically. Dispatch confirmations, edited timestamps, civilian footage, medical records proving dangerous delay. Then Marcus testified. The room became completely silent as he spoke. "I spent my life believing professionalism protected me," he said calmly. "I believed if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, stayed calm enough, I would be treated fairly." He looked directly at Madsen, sitting across the room. But that night none of it mattered. Not the degree, not the title, not the hospital ID. He saw a black man in an expensive car and decided I was lying before I ever spoke. No one moved. Marcus raised his injured hand slowly. This hand rebuilt arteries, saved children, saved your mayor's wife, and your officers nearly destroyed it because their pride mattered more than human life. Several council members wiped tears from their eyes. Then Olivia Chambers stood unexpectedly from the front row. "Dr. Bennett saved me after your officers assaulted him," she said fiercely. "If this city allows that truth to be buried, then none of us deserve the title of public servant." The chamber erupted in applause. 3 days later, Officer Troy Madsen was arrested. Charges included aggravated assault, falsifying records, civil rights violations, and obstruction. Sergeant Durham resigned before termination proceedings began. The police chief announced retirement within the week. And Marcus Bennett. He returned to the operating room 6 months later. The first surgery back was a difficult vascular repair, the kind requiring absolute precision. Inside the prep room, Marcus stared at his reflection quietly while tying his surgical mask. His hand no longer trembled. Outside the observation window, Denise and Maya watched nervously. "You ready?" the attending nurse asked softly. Marcus flexed his fingers once, then nodded. "Scalpel." The surgery lasted 5 hours. Perfect outcome. When Marcus finally stepped out of the operating room, the entire surgical floor applauded. Nurses, residents, staff. Denise cried openly as she embraced him. Maya smiled through tears. "You got your hands back." Marcus looked down at them silently. Strong, steady, certain. "No," he said quietly. Then he looked around the hospital corridor, filled with people who never stopped believing in him. "I got my life back."